Good afternoon, everybody. It's David Schlotthauer here, back with another detailed weather forecast. In today's update, we are keeping an eye on this very significant Midwest snowstorm that could wreak havoc, as thousands, if not millions, will be dealing with their first substantial snowstorm of the winter season. But that's not all. Significant freezing rain and ice accumulations are also anticipated with this winter storm as well. And then very cold, record-breaking Arctic air is expected to impact much of the Midwest and the eastern seaboard by this weekend into early next week. So without further ado, let's get started with the forecast on this major, massive winter storm that is expected to develop across the Midwest and move eastward into the eastern seaboard by the very early part of next week. We're looking at a lot of ice, folks. This is pretty concerning. So starting off the forecast here for Saturday morning on the ECMWF, this is the European model, and we can see all of this blue here up here across, say, Montana. If you're in Idaho, that is snow. That's not going to be the big problem here because it's all going to set up down here across the Midwest. And watch the transition here. So Saturday morning now looks to be pretty good for the most part for a lot of locations living in the Midwest. But as we go forward into, say, Saturday afternoon, this is when it really is going to develop. And with that being said, let's actually zoom in here so we can get into more better detail for you all. So this is what it looks like by about, say, 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. And this right here, my friends, that's ice. That's freezing rain. That's going to be a huge problem if you're in Kansas City, if you're in central Kansas. Yeah, it's going to start around Saturday afternoon into the evening hours. And then to the north of that, this is all going to be snow as that Arctic air moves in out of the north. And of course, to the south, it's going to be in the form of rain. And of course, that comes with it some severe weather across the deep south. We'll be looking at that here in just a wee second. Now, going into Sunday morning, this is when it really blows up. This is when the most concerning time arrives for the freezing rain. You can see all of the purple here, actually all the pink, I should say. That's a lot of freezing rain, and that's a lot of ice accumulation on the roads, on your roofs, trees, any infrastructure you can think about. And as this accumulates a lot, we can see up to a half an inch in some of these areas. That combined with strong winds, we are going to most certainly see widespread power outages, and not just for, say, a couple of hours here. We could see power outages that last up to a week or more in some of these areas because the ice is not going to thaw out at all because we're going to have some very cold air coming in its wake. You can even see it up here in, say, Iowa, as well as, say, portions of the Dakotas, Nebraska, seeing that cooler air, that snow coming down out of the north, and those strong winds. Okay, and then of course, down across the deep south, that's where we have our risk of severe weather. In fact, the Storm Prediction Center has already issued a slight risk of severe weather across Louisiana, southern Arkansas, western Mississippi, and eastern Texas. And this would go for, you name it, Sunday morning into Monday morning. Now, looking at basically Sunday afternoon's forecast, it just does not get any better. The ice, the snow, the strong winds will spread further east. So like Kokomo, Indiana, Indianapolis, you can get a very wet snow here, and doesn't surprise me if it's wet enough to where we do get some freezing rain mixed in with that snow as far north as, say, Indianapolis, as well as, say, Columbus, Ohio. You have a pretty good shot at seeing a really wet snow combined with maybe some freezing rain and sleet, including to see a lot of that snow across northern Missouri. But looks like St. Louis, Missouri here, you're in trouble. You could see, I should say, some freezing rain and ice accumulations. And once it starts, it could really accumulate here, possibly up to a tenth to a quarter of an inch, maybe a little bit more than that. It just depends on how heavy it actually comes down in certain areas, but it's enough to lead to a lot of power outages. And then, of course, again, that severe weather event unfolding on Sunday could be a really big problem. We could be looking at some tornadoes, damaging winds, and maybe even some small or larger hail stones out of those storms. By the time we go into Sunday night into Monday, there is going to be a lot of this freezing rain, especially over Virginia, not West Virginia state, But West Virginia in itself, right here where I've circled in, that's where you have the potential for some significant ice accumulations through from Sunday night through Monday morning. And then, of course, in Maryland, let's actually go to the eastern sector here. Like Maryland, Delaware, if you are in, say, southern New Jersey, yeah, you're going to start seeing snow there arriving as early as Sunday night. Probably overnight, actually, looks like here about, say, 1 in the morning on Monday, and then it's going to continue all the way, it looks like now, through Monday morning. So it now seems that the system has slowed down a little bit, so it looks like the Euro is slowly trending over to the GFS model and the Canadian model showing a slower solution here, which is going to be unfortunate because you all are going to be commuting all out in this. And hopefully you all just stay home because this would be about 5 in the morning, 6 in the morning your time. And a lot of people do commute around, say, 5 to 6 in the morning. And that's where you're going to be dealing with a lot of snow, freezing rain, some power outages due to the strong winds. Just not going to be a good day to commute at all to work next Monday. Now, what does the GFS model tell us? Well, as we fast forward this, not too bad of weather conditions at all until we get to, say, Saturday afternoon now. Looks like the GFS has trended a little bit slower in accordance to our European model, but still pretty much eyeballing. It looks like Saturday early afternoon, mid-afternoon, late afternoon is when things are going to start picking up here on the radar. We got some snow to the north, some freezing rain and sleet. That is going to be a huge problem here. And so by Sunday morning, yes, it is also showing up here on GFS that, yep, this whole area down here in southern Missouri, as well as eastern portion there of Kansas, has the best chances of seeing freezing rain. And then to the north, you got some sleet. And then north of that, you got some heavy snow. And it looks like here on the GFS model, most likely here over St. Louis, you're going to be dealing with some sleet in the mix of snow versus the European model just showing a lot of freezing rain and straight over to snow, which I think the European model doesn't model the sleet very well. So you're probably going to be in the mixed bag of sleet and snow at the same time over St. Louis, Missouri. But hey, forget about it if you're down here in, say, western Kentucky, southern Illinois, northern Tennessee. You're going to be dealing with a lot of ice accumulations, power outages, you name it. It's going to be a really, really big problem. And it's just going to continue. Look at this. All the way through Sunday night into Monday morning, there's going to be ice accumulations if you're in Virginia, West Virginia, and North Carolina. A lot of questions coming in on last night's live stream for leading up to New Year's about, am I going to get snow or am I going to get freezing rain? Your answer is, if you're in Columbus, Ohio, you have a better shot of getting all snow. If you're in, say, Kokomo, Indiana, if you're in Indianapolis, you're likely to see all snow out of the system. If this continues to trend northward, it'll be a different story. And then, say, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, southern Pennsylvania, Allentown, you could get a little bit of a flurry out of this as this goes to your south. But most of the snowfall will occur to the south of Pennsylvania and across, say, Delaware and south of New Jersey area, according to our GFS model. But that's not all. We're going to bring the Canadian model for a ride, right? So as we look at this forecast, you can see, of course, for the Pacific Northwest, I almost forgot about this. I did not want to forget on the Canadian that there's going to be an ice storm also for the interior of Oregon and Washington. Strong easterly winds that is going to buckle that colder air down in the valleys, warmer air loft. So there could be a significant amounts of ice accumulations here, possibly on the order of about 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 an inch in these areas. So power outages. This is a troubling system. It starts all the way up across the Pacific Northwest and then it drops down. You can see it come all the way down into the northern plains and then eventually into the Midwest, where it is going to cause a lot of problems. Man, this is one of those storms that's just going to be a cross-country madness, Mageddon-like system. So as we go forward, you can see here for Sunday morning, it really takes off. The system, again, Saturday is our transition day. Sunday is our stormy day. If you're, again, in Missouri, freezing rain, sleet, and snow, wintry mix across this area. Strong winds, don't want to forget about that. We could see some damaging northerly winds coming in on the backside of this because of the pressure gradient that's involved with this Arctic air mass to its north. And then as we go into Sunday afternoon, this is probably when the winter storm will be at its strongest with the heaviest ice accumulations and the snow accumulations along to go with the severe weather threat. And you can see right down here, this warm sector, well-defined sector, well-dynamic setup. And that's where we will have the chances for tornadoes. And it's hard to say exactly if there's going to be strong tornadoes or not, but I would bet on at least one strong tornado out of this severe weather event on Sunday. Doesn't surprise me, especially in Mississippi and Louisiana and even southeastern Arkansas, where you get the southern side of the system where you get southerly flow. And then once you get into the colder side, you won't have tornadoes, but you'll have other problems to deal with, like ice accumulations. And look at this, is pretty significant here through Sunday night across Kentucky. Man, this is the bullseye here would be Kentucky and southern portion there of Missouri. And then look at this. Oh my goodness. By Monday morning, lots of ice accumulation across, say, far western portion of North Carolina and central Virginia state, as well as West Virginia here, just getting it on some wintry mess. And this is about, say, 7 or so in the morning. There's going to be a lot of snow, freezing rain, and gusty winds. There will be power outages, and there will probably be road closures. Doesn't surprise me on the I-95 corridor could really be impacted in the morning commute. And then even by the evening commute, you could still be dealing with some snow, but not as bad as it will be Monday morning. And then that system moves offshore by, say, Tuesday. Now, I'm not going to really get ahead of myself a whole lot here. I'm going to kind of move through this pretty vaguely with you all. But there's another snowstorm that we are watching quite closely here on the GFS model. This is for Tuesday and Wednesday next week. So probably another one of these big snowstorms could be impacting the deep south here. And this has been on the models for a couple of runs already. So that's why we're going to probably have to start talking about it since it's within that 7-day period. And as we do go into Wednesday morning, you see some snow that are developing across central Texas. You can see the blue there. And then we will see what happens with this, but this would be a pretty significant winter storm for areas across Louisiana, Mississippi. I mean, this is for Thursday afternoon, January the 9th and the 10th. This is really, really far out. And again, like I want to tell you all, fantasy land here on the GFS, something that gets this far south doesn't happen very often. So I want to caution you all to watch other YouTube channels very carefully because they might hype this up a little bit and say, oh, we're going to get a massive ice storm, winter storm, snowstorm, whatever you want to name it in the Gulf states, and even seen some ice down here right off the Gulf Coast of the United States. So therefore, I'm not putting a lot of prediction into this right now. This is way up in the air, but it has been in the last couple of runs from the GFS, and we will see if this continues to show in future model runs. But something to keep an eye on for the middle of next week. We may have to deal with another winter storm, and I emphasize that carefully. May, not will, may have to deal with something. Okay, now with that being said, let's take a look at our ice accumulations because a lot of you are waiting for this part of the video with how much ice could actually accumulate. And right now, based on the consistency of model runs that I'm about to show you from both the Euro, the GFS, the American model, and the Canadian model, showing anywhere between about, I would say, anywhere between, say, about 3/10 of an inch to maybe 6/10 of an inch. So that's 0.6 inches of ice that could accumulate across southern portion there of Illinois, southern Indiana. If you're in Cincinnati and say south of Columbus, Ohio, you can get some ice accumulation. If you're in West Virginia and if you're in Virginia State, you could get possibly about a half an inch or more of ice. And then if you're in, say, Kansas and Missouri, like St. Louis, you could get anywhere between, say, about a quarter of an inch to maybe a half an inch of ice. That's enough to lead to a lot of power outages. Now, looking at the GFS model, a little less bullish here, but still showing quite a bit of ice accumulations, anywhere between maybe about a quarter of an inch to about a half an inch in these given areas, stretching all the way from central Kansas into southern Missouri, southern Illinois, southern Indiana, into Kentucky, northern Tennessee, as well as West Virginia and Virginia State. This is enough, again, to lead to a lot of power outages. We could have 1 million without power because trees coming down, infrastructure failing. Now, more concerning, this is the most bullish from the Canadian model, showing a little less ice accumulations over here in Kansas, probably between about a quarter to maybe 4/10 of an inch, possibly up to a half an inch of ice accumulation if you're in southern Missouri, southern Illinois, maybe about a quarter to maybe 4/10 of an inch. But more concerning over here in Kentucky, you might see up to about a half an inch or more, locally maybe up to 3/4 of an inch of ice accumulation. And that is enough to lead to widespread infrastructure issues, such as power lines coming down, trees coming down because of the weight of the ice, roof collapses because all that ice is just going to be on top of roofs, especially roofs like stadiums. There's any inflatable roofs. I've seen those before. There could be a lot of problems, a lot of weight being put on these ceilings and stuff. And then, of course, roads could be covered with ice, or will likely at this point. So driving is extremely dangerous when you get this amount of ice. Flying as well, we could see flight cancellations. Doesn't surprise me there, including for the eastern seaboard, could be really impacted. This is a winter storm to not mess with at all, folks, because this is going to lead to a lot of power outages. Probably more, almost 1 million people could be left in the dark after this system is done. So now, how much snowfall could you see out of this winter storm that is expected here on the Euro for the early part of next week, for the weekend into early next week? Anywhere between about 8 to 12 inches of snow is being indicated here, probably a little more than what the Euro is showing, especially over central Indiana, central Illinois, as well as southern Ohio, just because the Euro on last night's run, if we look at the 0Z run, it showed a lot more. Even the 06Z had a lot more, and now all of a sudden it really kind of backed off a little bit. We'll see if that trend actually continues. The GFS is still quite bullish here on the 10-1 ratio snowfall totals across, say, St. Louis to the north, as well as, say, central and southern Illinois. Could get anywhere between 8 to 15 inches of snowfall, with some areas like Kentucky, like northern Kentucky, where it's mainly going to be in the form of snow on the GFS. You could see up to maybe about 10 inches of accumulation there of snow, but some of this could be in the form of ice and sleet as well, with West Virginia getting maybe up to a foot. Now, I want to remind you and not stress enough on this. Lake effect snow will be a huge issue. There's lake effect snow warnings out for Lake Ontario and Lake Erie, with possibly a few feet of snowfall that is anticipated through Monday, early Monday next week, because of all the snow that is anticipated. On the Canadian model, here's a look at the snowfall accumulation, and you can see right there, lots of lake effect snow, lots of problems out there, and lake effect snow comes down to exactly where you're located at an exact time. But overall, snowfall totals here across the upper Midwest and portions of the Midwest, anywhere between, say, 4 to 12 inches is what we're going with. So the snowfall amounts here, not as substantial as what we were first thinking like a few days ago, but the ice accumulation, folks, don't take this system lightly at all, okay? A lot of you are like, oh, the snow's not going to be as bad, at least that's good. Well, there will be a lot of ice problems, still a lot of accumulation leading to power outages. This is still a big deal, okay? And then, of course, what comes by the middle of next week is still to be announced, because there's a lot of wiggle room on that system. So now, the concerning aspect to all of this is, unlike past ice storms, the ice storm happens, then the temperatures are able to warm up behind it as we get subtle warming temperatures. In this case, we're not going to see that. Temperatures are going to cool off actually with time, even in the wake of this system. And just to go to show you this, let's go all the way into Saturday. So here's your system right here. See that sharp frontal boundary? Those temperatures are falling right behind the front. This is colder air wrapping all the way around the system You get warmer air advection here, so that's why severe weather is going to be the issue down here in the deep south as temperatures warm into the 70s. And what ends up happening is where you get this freezing rain right in here, pretty much. That's just kind of a vague area that I've circled in. Look at what these temperatures do. They cool down. The ice is not able to thaw out and melt and allow it to fall off of trees without the tree coming down, right? Because once ice does melt enough, it will slide off of roofs without a problem. But that could mean it could hit your face or it could hit your body with a lot of force. So if there is some melting, recognize water dripping off of ice. That means the ice is loose and it could fall off of trees. And if there's enough of it, it could literally lead to a lot of injuries. So keep that in mind. But otherwise, temperatures are going to be too cold here for it to melt. So it's going to stick for a long time, probably for a few days, probably even longer than that. As long as these temperatures stay really cold, we could have ice accumulation, or the ice that it does accumulate this weekend may not melt at all through the entire week of next week. So that means power outages could last perhaps, well, they could last a long time, as long as a week or more in some of these areas. Because, yeah, it's just going to stay cold once that colder air arrives. Here's another way to visualize it. Here's look at your temperature anomaly forecast, and you can see by this weekend, temperatures will be well below average. That's a guarantee. We're already seeing some concerns maybe for wind chill advisories up there. Could get issued soon over the Dakotas because of that cooler air moving in. And then look at it gets reinforced by the early part of next week. The whole pattern is way different next week across much of the Midwest, and it gets even colder. Look at this. This is insane. Temperatures 40 degrees below average. Are you kidding me? On Thursday or on Wednesday next week, much colder air. And then if that snowstorm or ice storm happens, look at the temperatures across the deep south. Could be on the order of 20 to 30 degrees below average. That is just insane. That's mind-boggling. And eventually, maybe for Georgia, could have some of the coldest temperatures you have ever witnessed in a few years, or even more than that, because of this Arctic air that wants to come out of the north. But anyways, if you found this video really helpful, detailed, and informative, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button right now. Enable all notifications on this YouTube channel to get latest detailed updates on this winter storm, because again, we are probably going to end up going live again tonight. I do work until 6:15. I will be home after that, and we are going to try to go live and do a live discussion, look at our latest model renders as they come in this evening, and then look ahead at that snowstorm for the middle of next week, because there's going to be a lot going on in the weather department here. So make sure you do subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to get latest updates here on the channel. Not only that, hit the thumbs up button if you did enjoy today's video, and also leave a comment in the section below. Let me know what your thoughts on this video are, what you want me to do to improve the video a little bit better. And let me know how your New Year's Day is coming along. Are you prepping for the snowstorm? Let me know in the comment section below this video. But otherwise, thank you all for watching, and I'll be back with you more this evening.